Hello again, and welcome to another edition of the Now Show. As you know, our show is the show of overcomers and winners. That's our whole essence. And on today's show, I have with me a super overcomer, a winner beyond all measures. Somebody who, when I heard the story, was so mind-blowing, I said, she is our overcomer and our winner for this week. On today's episode, joining me is my sister, my friend, Mrs. Linda Jabaru. She's a wife, a mother of two wonderful boys. Thank you so much for being on the Now Show.
Thank you too.
And also with her is her sister-in-law, Morolake. I mean, she just had to be here when I heard the story. So we're going to be talking to both of them. But the whole essence, I'm starting with Linda, is Linda's story. Started June last year, 2019. Her birthday, 12th of June, 2019. She was bubbling, she had a party, dancing. And by the next day, 13th of June, 2019, the story changed. So I'll leave Linda to talk about her story. Linda, welcome again.
Thank you very much for having me on this show. So yes, it was June the 13th. We were on our way back from Ibiza. I'd gone on a holiday break with my husband, a birthday break with my husband, and we're back home. We're going back home. So at Luton Airport, I started to feel headache, slight headache. Didn't take too much notice of it, but when I got home, it was getting worse, and I was having stiff neck, and I had flu-like symptoms. So got home, took paracetamol, was in bed for 2 days with a lot of fluid.
Yes, of course. Fluish, they just take paracetamol
and just sleep it out, and a lot of fluid in my system. So yes, that was it. Then I noticed that I started to have pins and needles in my hand, and I was wondering what that was. So on Thursday, so we got back on a weekday, I think a Monday or so. So by Thursday, the flu was getting better, but I was having some very strange symptoms. So I went to the GP, and she discarded it as being I'm an event planner, so I was working too much. So she said, just go home and take some more paracetamol, and you'll be better. So I did that. But the Friday, friends and family had planned a birthday party for me, so I couldn't say no to that. So I went with the organization and everything, and we had a lovely party. But what I realized, the Saturday after, so this was a Friday night, Saturday I had a wedding. And as soon as we got to the wedding, we were decorating and everything. Normally I would sit there and I would be screaming, everybody knows me, giving the orders, you do this, the flowers here, the this, that. I couldn't even speak. So a member of my staff said to me, Auntie's not feeling right. I'm going to call. So he went and called my husband and said, she's not right. Normal her, she'll be talking about timing, this, that. At that time, I didn't really take notes of it, but what I had noticed was that I'd maxed out on like 2 sachets full of paracetamol extra, and it wasn't getting any better. And doctor kept saying, that was it. When the bride and groom came to view the room, they were very happy, they were ecstatic, and they asked if they could see me, but I was lying down in the car, I just laid down flat in the car. So
you were feeling that unwell already?
Unwell already, and it was getting worse, it was progressing. So my husband came after work, took me this was in Bromley, took me straight to A&E. They did a brain scan, they couldn't still find anything that was wrong with me. So They said to me, they'll put me on the observation and they'll let me go. But by Sunday night, it was worse, so I went back in, and that was where the story started from. And it was a journey. So fast forward from that day, everything was just shutting down in my system, my nervous system, everything was ground zero. It took about 5 days for them to even diagnose what the problem was, because it's a very rare condition. The condition is called Guillain-Barré syndrome, and it affects 1 in 100,000 people.
1 in 100,000.
Yes. So it was very difficult to diagnose because they had to do like 2 MRIs scans. So they didn't really catch anything from it. It was from a lumbar puncture on my spine. They actually took the fluid and then found out what was wrong with me. Now, at that point, I was already deteriorating. I was very poorly. I couldn't walk. I couldn't move any limbs. My whole body just shut down. My whole nervous system shut down. And yeah, that was it. So this was still June, July. I remember being taken from from Barnet Hospital where I was to Royal Free Hospital, because then it was very severe. They knew what was wrong with me. And I was in the ambulance. It was a lovely, sunny, and I remember the story quite well, this particular day quite well, because I was in the ambulance being blue lighted from Barnet General to Hampstead. And when I have flashbacks, I just remember clearly what happened.
Yeah.
Being blue lighted in an ambulance to Royal Free Hospital. It was a very lovely summer day. Life was just, the sky was blue, everything was just right. The kids were playing in the park. Driving through, the gentleman who took me said, "Oh, it's a very lovely day, Mrs Jabaru. We're going to lift you up so you could see, you're lying flat, but we could see the window." And I looked, and what occurred to me was that everything was normal. Life, cars were flying by, updates, A41, people were just going by their business.
Yeah.
Nobody knew I was in there. Nobody, it just showed that what it taught me, and what lesson I took out of that was that nothing is going to stop for you, not for a nanosecond.
Nothing is going to stop for you.
Life will carry on. And it shaped my thinking since then. So this was it. I was taken to Royal Free, and I remember being taken to the 11th floor. And I remember the 11th floor because when the Ebola thing started, that was where they took the Ebola woman who came from.
Wow.
And so it was it's a quarantine where they quarantine you.
Okay.
Because they weren't sure if it was Guillain-Barré that was causing the symptoms, or if I'd caught something. Because on that trip, I actually went scuba diving, and I did a lot of kayaking as well. So they were worried maybe something had bitten me in the waters in the Mediterranean Sea.
So they were also still trying to
with that. But fortunately, nothing happened. So they took me in, and I remember days after that, I was there. Then I was totally paralyzed, and the doctor said to me that
I was going to say that. I'm going to stop you there, because now you're talking of Royal Free Hospital. But before you went to Royal Free Hospital, you were in Barnet.
Yes, I was in Barnet General Hospital.
And we're talking earlier, and I know a number of things that went at Barnet. That, because I brought Sister Morolake here because she was saying some things that you couldn't even see. So we're going back to Barnet Hospital, and you're going to tell us, what your experience, actually being somebody who was watching, was at that time.
Yes, it was amazing, and because she walked with her feet into Barnet,
into the hospital,
and gradually she deteriorated. The case, and it was like a joke. It was like, oh, okay, you're in the hospital. Okay, what's going on? No, you can't feel your legs. So it's going to be 1 or 2 days or so. By the time that and then all of us who used to come see her thought, oh, okay, because she was talking, and then gradually, from day to day, you come today, she's not eating. The next day she can't lift her hand, and then the third day sees, I couldn't go to the bathroom today. I fell down, and it was a case of somebody who had all her life, intact, was just, shutting down. Things are just shutting down day by day. She walked with her legs in, and then gradually
from a party,
and then everything just, went, bizarre, and it was it was kind of like emotional.
Yes.
Because she's a very, up and doing person. Even the puzzles that were in front of her, she couldn't, the magazines, she couldn't read them. She couldn't eat. One thing was so funny. I took her Choco Milo and she couldn't even put chocolate. She could. So that's why. And we had this
something as simple as taste. Which we take for granted.
She could, pepper soup. She couldn't tell if it was peppery or if it was hot or if it was cold. So I knew something was wrong, but I didn't. I couldn't really catch it. And being, a novice and not being a medical person, I couldn't even explain how someone who had all her life intact one day was losing it, gradually. This was not a case of,
in only a few days.
In only a few days. So it was funny.
Can I come back to you, Mrs. Linda? How were you feeling at this time? I mean, watching life ebb out of you, watching you deteriorating, watching the fact that you're helpless, you can't do things that you would do. What was happening to you at that time? Because it takes,
I mean, to be quite honest, I was scared. So it was like someone drowning and you're trying to stay afloat and everything around you is just spiraling, just falling apart. And there wasn't time for us to, so every day that something was happening, the doctors were calling my husband into one room or the other. So there was no time to even reflect on, okay, where are we? I remember one day we just sat down, everyone had left, and both of us sat down and were like, how did we get here? What happened?
What happened?
And for someone who had never seen, I've only seen him cry once, was when his father died. And the day they were telling him that we're going to take her in because we're going to put her in an induced coma, and she, if we don't do this, she's going to die in 24 hours.
Wow.
Being told that. And I remember when they told me that, to be quite honest, I wasn't scared anymore. At that point, I was in a lot of pain. I was like, maybe at 45, maybe it's not too bad to actually go now. I haven't done too bad. Yeah. I had that conversation and I said to him, I don't think crying is a solution. I think we just need to go with it. If God wants me to go, he would let me go. And I wasn't scared after a while. I was just numb, so to speak. And, I'm just going to take it as it is. But the day before I was taken into ICU, one of the pastors from my church came to see me, Pastor Ken, and he prayed with me. He gave me communion and anointed me and said to me, and I said to him, because I couldn't really speak. Yeah. I said to him, I was mumbling, but he was trying to listen to what I was saying. I said, why me? And that why me question is when people ask why me.
It's a lot of, it's an emotion people who have things happen to them go through. It's like, why me?
Why me? Why now? Why now when things are so good and everything was working, working well for me? And he said to me, and he was very honest about it. He said to me that I do not know. I don't have the question. I don't have the answer to that question you've asked. And he could see that at my face. I was like deflated and, tears were coming out of my eyes. He said to me, so when he was going, he said to me, he said, Linda, you're here alone. In your quiet time, why don't you ask God?
Wow.
Why don't you just ask him at this time and he will tell you? And when he told me that, I took it literally as he did.
Yes.
So when he left, everyone had gone home. I actually did ask.
Yes.
That why? Why me at 45? What's going on?
Thank God for wise counsel. Because that is a time that people come and fill your head with all manner of things. Yeah. Like you said, why now? Things are going very well. Everything seems to be working. Now is the time for you to enjoy life. Yeah. And all of a sudden this happens. And truly and honestly, because of the part of the world where we're from, somebody somewhere will come and say, maybe it's because of your success. There are some people after you.
Oh, yeah.
That
we
this
had
has
all
happened.
of that.
Can you imagine?
I had all of that. I had even the nurse saying to me in Yoruba, and she said to me, where are your parents? So he said in Yoruba, Auntie, where are your parents? Ibo lawon, mamaya to babayewa, and you should go home. Do not listen to because they're just pumping you with a lot of medication. Why don't you seek help from So what she was saying to me was, why don't you look elsewhere?
Or
you know, or
or something.
But,
yes, help yourself. Like you would say.
But I laughed it off because I was just thinking it was ignorance, because it's only ignorance. But then again, I thought to myself, in a desperate situation, someone would ask, you know, where do I get help from?
Yes.
But for me, he showed himself, he was real. And when I say that, I don't say it in a biblical religious form. He was by my side. And when I prayed that prayer, so going back to that prayer, I prayed and I asked God, why me?
Why?
He gave me peace of mind. And I think when we're in such a situation where we're very low, when you have the peace of God, it surpasses everything.
Yes.
It makes you, it just puts you in the right place. Like, as I was like in a cocoon, I was in like, like a child. I was like, he put me in that childlike state where he just said to me, be still and know that I am God. That was what he laid on me. And he said, I'm the God of the impossible. I didn't hear him from anywhere, but I just had that come to me. And that gave me a lot of succor. It gave me a lot of, how do I say it? It gave me a lot of peace. So to say, I had peace and I had
comfort.
I had comfort, and I felt okay. From here now, I'll be safe and I'll be fine. And a few hours after, they came all scrubbed up, ready to wheel me. And you know what I see?
So when people find themselves in situations as grave as you were in,
yes.
What I hear you say is that is the moment to hold on to God.
Yes, absolutely.
It
is difficult to do that.
Yes.
Because you find yourself in a situation where the way I saw it is that I take what I have or I sink. It was either, so you're floating, you're trying to stay afloat. You didn't have any other, I didn't have any other option. So it wasn't a matter of, I would, the medics were doing their work, and I know, and I do not fault them for anything, because God has put them in that position. But I had to do what I had to do. I had to just hold on.
So there's your part to play.
Yeah.
There's a role that you played too.
Yeah, absolutely. So I did that, and I held on to that. And for me, it was very real to just do that, to give me sanity. Here I am losing everything. I couldn't even hold a pen, and there were lots of agreements I needed to sign, and there were a lot of jobs that I needed to tell them what I had discussed with the client.
You had gotten to, what
they needed to do, and I couldn't. So they would ask my husband, where's that book where she writes everything when she goes to the client visits, and things like that. And God brought help at every stage. My business was still running. I wasn't just there. Everything that needed to be done was done. In terms of my kids, I'm the strong one in the family. I couldn't deal with, my husband was helpless. He didn't even know where to buy school shoes for them. And he would ask me, he would come there, where do you buy their white shirts from? That was how much he didn't know what to do.
Anything
he was helpless.
That was going on, which usually is the way we run our home.
Yeah, so those things were very key. And we went through that motion. The doctor, they said to me, yeah, now we're going to intubate you and put you in a coma and all of that. But what happened was, because your heart rate starts to slow down and your breathing stops, because I was already paralyzed from my neck down to my toes. I couldn't move any limb.
Paralyzed?
Yeah, paralyzed.
From your neck?
Down
to my toes.
To my toes.
Wow.
But, so it was weird that you're still breathing without that, because you won't stop breathing. So they were using a spirometer to actually check my breathing level every time. And when they found out that it was really bad, that was when they said they would do that. But every time they tried to see if I had feelings here, I did. So it's not possible. If you can't feel your back, how can you feel the front part? So they put me in okay, well, we're not going to say, if you can feel it, we don't know why, we can't explain that, but we're still going to do what we have to do. So they carried on. And as soon as they put me in there, they put the oxygen on and all of that. The head consultant came in and said, could you just try one more time and see where the level of her breathing level is? And normally it would be, say something is, a normal person would be like 90.
Yes.
I was in the 30s. And when is in the I think 40, that means you would stop, your lungs will collapse. So I'd gone below that. But as soon as they tried it again, the guy was like, no, she's about 49, 50.
Wow.
And they were like, no, it's not possible.
Amazing God.
That, for me, that was fundamental. That was where I knew God had stepped
Was in charge. Was in charge.
He had taken the situation off their hands, and he was like, I am not going to leave you. I said I'm not going to leave you.
Yes.
So the doctor was like, I remember clearly, and he's saying to me, what did you do? You know, I don't know what you believe in, but whatever you believe in is working for you.
Wow.
And for me, it was an affirmation that God was real and God was with me.
Yes.
So from that day, but they were like, oh, we're still not going to, oh, maybe it just happened like a fluke.
Yeah, I know.
We're going to keep you here and keep measuring. And from there, I didn't do anything. It just got better. So they were like, they didn't know what to do, but to let me, keep going.
Yes.
And then I was put on a treatment. So the treatment is quite expensive, but went through that motion. They gave me the treatment. People were praying. People prayed. We prayed. My family prayed. They gathered together. They had a prayer chain. And people took turns and they were praying. And one thing I'll say again is that it wasn't as if God wasn't listening to those prayers. His ways are not our ways, and his time is not our time, because
different from us.
if it was the amount of prayers people prayed when I was ill, I probably would have got up, because there were people who come and, men of God who come up and say, you would stand up and walk from that wheelchair.
Exercise your faith.
Exercise my faith and tell me, Linda, you need to believe. And one thing I remember saying to one of my friends, Bam, who came to see me in hospital with his wife, and he said to me, I said, I know God will do what he will do in his time. Those prayers were not wasted. I might be on a wheelchair today, but I know that I'm going to walk out of this place with my faith. I was convicted. I was 101% sure I'll be fine. When I didn't know, how I didn't know. But I used to even tell everybody in the hospital, my physio, they thought I was mad. Because when you have that, it takes 3 years for you to get better.
Wow.
Now you need to learn. So it's like a child, because obviously I didn't have any gaits or anything.
Wait, it takes 3 years?
Yes, at least 3 years for you to gain. So it's 99% chance that you will go back to your normal lifestyle with Guillain-Barré, but it takes time because it's your nerves.
A few months.
Yeah. So in total, everything's happened within 6 months, 7 months. Yeah. For me to actually. So even the doctors are amazed, and I don't take it for granted, because I know it can only be God that had, that would do such a thing.
Yes.
He said he would do it, and he did it.
And he did it.
He did. He was there with me. I didn't lose my mind. I had a psychologist who would come and see me every time, and so they would just to make sure that you're fine. And every time she came, we just used to play puzzles, because we didn't have anything to do.
Anything to say.
Because as soon as she came in, she's like, where are you? I said, I'm in my happy place.
Yeah.
And when I say that, happy place, and I say that every time, happy place to me was, I had this, I always do this, even as a child.
Yes.
I would go into, so everything around me, I'll just close up, and I'll just go into, I just remember something good that's happened to me, or something good that's going to happen. Okay, we're traveling to London in the summer, so I'm just going to close my head and think about that. For me, during the sickness, I did the same thing. I just used to think of my testimony. I used to say, I'm going to testify. I'm going to go to church, and I would think of how I'll be dancing in church, how people will be praising God. So I would close my eyes and I would just go into that happy place. I was in pain. I was in a lot of pain. I was helpless, but I just had to. You have to find a place within you. Yes. So that happy place for me was, when I get better, I will do this. When I get better, I'm going to do that. I'm going to give God the glory. I'm going to do that. And that put me in that happy place. And that kept me together. I kept my sanity, because here I was, I couldn't even, you couldn't even, you had to you didn't have any control over your wee, over your poo, over any, I didn't have a control over any of that.
Yes.
I was totally
Because
useless.
your system had
shut down. So to find yourself in such degrading situation, it takes a strong mind,
Yes.
a sound mind, and that was what God gave me.